Program where you wake up late because you were drinking all night, and then we don't give you a lunch break. Woohoo! Yeah. Sorry if you're diabetic. There's insulin at Reg. And Snickers bars. Are we good, streamers? Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. We got 3 thumbs up and only 2 functions, so we got an extra thumb. Go Army. Yeah, whatever, Navy. The cadets, I think, are going home because they're all dressed the same. So, sorry. Did you have fun? Yeah, you got to wear civvies? Yeah. It's like, yeah, I didn't have to wear a goddamn uniform. So this is the closing plenary for ShmooCon. This is an experiment we've been running now for 4 or 5 years, and the idea is to try to get everybody together and have some interesting and potentially not comfortable discourse around the state of something in the industry. And for the previous 4 years, we pulled the plenary panel members from the talk submissions. You know, if we got a lot of, like last year, we had a lot of talks on mass scanning, so we pulled together people on mass scanning and stuff like that. And it's been interesting. And this year, nothing really jumped out at us, so we kind of, we're thinking, like, what are interesting challenges? What's the pointy end of the spear look like these days? And we came to the conclusion that, academia is playing an increasingly important role in cybersecurity and the space in general. And, there's been a lot of changes in academia, so we wanted to get some academics together. So to tee this up a little bit more, Mouse is going to say a few words. She'll introduce our panelists, and then they'll get cruising. Some of these panelists have been to ShmooCon before and are familiar with the way it happens. I think the gentleman in blue is his first time. He has not been beamed by a shmoo ball yet, but he has a big thing of water in front of him, so you better have good aim, or Jeff better be prepared to get wet. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mouse. Yep.
Go Mouse!
One of the first talks I ever gave at this conference was how to hack your way into the Ivy League. Most of us, I think, have had experiences where we didn't fit the typical high school, college, grad school, factory line production format, and therefore thought that we weren't smart, or we weren't capable, or we weren't good enough. And we founded this community, and we discovered this other group of who were also creative and interesting and exciting, and we'd have the most intelligent conversations at 4 a.m. when we were half drunk. And but I don't think it sunk in to a lot of us that the work we're doing is research. It doesn't have a related work section. You haven't looked at prior art necessarily, and you haven't cited your references, but it's research. And finally, the academic community is beginning to recognize that, and they're starting programs that can help. And we've got 4 incredible people here. I'd like to introduce Jeff Foster from the University of Maryland, who is starting a cybersecurity program, as well as doing programming languages and systems and architecture. Greg Conti, who I'm sure many of you have seen his wonderful talks and presentations here, as well as elsewhere, who has developed an incredible program at West Point that has really contributed a lot to our community. Rick Forno, who runs the graduate cybersecurity program at the University of Maryland at Baltimore County. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce my own advisor, Matt Blaze from the University of Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Okay. So, thanks, Sandy. I had just prepared a bunch of opening remarks, and then you gave them. So, so I'm just gonna wing it. So I've been asked to moderate this panel, which is good because I have no idea what I'm doing here. So this is supposed to be a panel on cybersecurity and information security education and how we do it. And my background is I got my PhD. And had to get a job, and I went and got the best job in the world, which was a researcher at Bell Labs. All the Bell Labs alums, and it's great because it's they basically pay you and you do whatever you want. You do research, and that was a terrific job. And I decided to switch kind of into security full time when I started there, and just started doing it, coming from a kind of general systems background. And I spent a dozen years at the labs, just kind of doing security stuff, coming from my background as a general systems researcher and cryptography person. And then Bell Labs blew up, and I had to go get a real job. And the closest thing to a real job I could find was a professor. And I went to the University of Pennsylvania. And this is coming from Bell Labs. Professor is a real job. That's the amazing, amazing thing. I would teach some classes in things, and I teach graduate classes in specific things like cryptography, and I'd advise graduate students. And advising PhD students is basically an apprenticeship program, so you basically are just having people work with you on the research that you're doing. And every now and then I would teach like the undergraduate operating systems class, and every now and then they would come along and say, "Hey, Matt, you do security. Maybe you should teach, the security class, undergraduate class in security." And my reaction is always, "Oh shit," because I have no idea what should be in that class. As far as I can tell, the preparation for doing research in security is largely, know a lot about computer science broadly and have kind of an evil mind. And, we have all these other courses about computer science broadly, and you kind of either have an evil mind or you don't. So I'm not sure what to do. And then I look at what other people teach, and, I look at these courses, and largely what we're doing is we're taking other areas of computer science and just kind of looking at them with a security bent. And, maybe we should have that security bent in the other courses in the first place. Maybe that's why we're in the mess that we're in. Instead of having people be specialists in security, maybe computer science generalists should be thinking about these things to keep us out of the mess that we're in right now. Sarah Zatko, who unfortunately couldn't be here on this panel, has been doing some terrific work in integrating security, not as a specialty, but as general parts of the curriculum. So, fortunately, I was asked to moderate this panel. And mostly I'm going to sit here and take notes about what other people do. So we have three terrific panelists who you've heard from. We have Jeff Foster at University of Maryland College Park. We have Greg Conte, who I think everyone knows. I will say one word about Greg Conte, which is that, as far as I'm concerned, he is one of only a couple of people on Earth who are licensed to use the word cyber unironically. Richard Forno at UMBC. So what I want to lead off with is to ask them first to introduce themselves more deeply than we have, and tell us a little bit about how they came to where they are in security, and to lead off with the question, what the hell do we teach people in a security class?
I'm supposed to go first? I'm on. Okay. All right, so I'm Jeff Foster from the University of Maryland College Park, just a metro ride away from here, which is pretty good. Actually, I took the metro in this morning. So my background is I actually come from sort of a programming languages, software engineering background. So I'm interested, which grew out of like compilers, right? That's what the research field grew out of. And I'm interested in anything that works on like source code, including detecting security vulnerabilities in it. So that's how I got interested in security. And I've been working on security, I guess, actually really ever since I got my PhD. I've been doing some work in security. So what was your question, Matt?
What the hell do we do to teach people security?
Yeah, so actually I wanted to try to say something a little bit controversial, right? Maybe it'll be more fun this way.
And we don't have controversy here.
All right, good. That's good because I don't want anything knocking over my water here. So you said that maybe we can integrate security a little bit into all the other courses in an undergraduate computer science program. My feeling is this is hopeless because there is too much other stuff in computer science, right? I mean, the field is awesome. We're taking over the world. So at the University of Maryland, we have 25 and 27,000 undergrads. We have 2,400 computer science undergraduate majors. That's like 9% of the university population is doing CS right now. That is insane. And not everybody, so maybe everybody needs to know something about security, but not everybody is going to be up at a level where you all are at and be able to come to ShmooCon and participate in this kind of event. So I think there's too much other stuff in computer science to integrate security everywhere. You can put a little bit, but it's still got to be something that you specialize in. All right, so that's number one thing I wanted to say. The other thing I want to say is this is a really technical crowd, which is awesome, right? There are so many people out there, though, that aren't technical and that care about cybersecurity because we've taken over the world, right? And now we're stuck with it. So computing is everywhere. Everybody is realizing this. People are finally starting to push computing into K through 12 education, right? So for a while, it was only like the best school districts in the world that did this. Now everybody is realizing they have to do this. So we've taken over the world, and now we need to deal with it. There are people that want to worry about policy, legal issues. There are people that want to deal with psychology and et cetera. So how do we deal with all those people when we have a highly technical subject, right? I mean, all the skills that Matt was talking about, there are all these people that care, that might have good ideas, but they don't really have the background to participate. What the heck do we do with them? I guess this isn't fair. I'm asking a question even though I'm on the panel, but let's go with it.
Okay, great.
So I'm Greg Conti, and I think like many of you, I was always wired toward security, but I didn't necessarily realize it and realize there was a tribe surrounding it until I went about 15 years ago to my first DEF CON and Black Hat and kind of found my calling then and realized there's a whole community around it and realized I liked it and wanted to follow. Did get me wondering that if we should actually create live cyber licenses that we can issue to people. I would say, to be provocative, I wonder if we're approaching peak cyber, in that there are certain people that I have two friends, and one of them came to me one day at the height of the stock market and proclaimed to me that they were going to become a day trader. And another came to me at the height of the real estate boom and proclaimed to me that they were going to become that they'd passed their agent's license. Neither one of these people should ever, in any possible universe, be a day trader or a real estate agent. And I see small people, places around the country that I wonder if they should be becoming cyber places. And I see a lot of that. It's like everywhere, pretty much every place on the planet. Some people have long historic track records, and they should be the ones leading. But I do see that question and wonder if we're approaching peak cyber. I also see that there's a distinction between information security and this thing that is cyber. Information security, we worry about protecting systems. We do things like red teaming, and that we get a glimpse of large-scale conflict with bot armies and the like. But at the large scale, the idea of nations fighting nations at scale, I wonder if there's something bigger, this thing that is cyber operations. I also see that it's multidisciplinary. So when we're talking about just inside a computer science curriculum, embedding it, I think that we need to look across virtually every discipline has an intersection with this. And it's hard. Chemistry is the one, and there's probably some people in here that have figured this out, but I haven't figured out chemistry. But every other discipline, you see an intersection. And there are efficiencies that you can use. If you have to do an exercise in class, why you could make it on security. So there are ways to be efficient about it, and things don't necessarily have to fall off the already full plate. The final thing I'll say is one thing that concerns me is the ethical aspects of what we do. We're learning dangerous skills, and people have learned dangerous skills all along. Locksmiths, soldiers, police officers. But we have dangerous skills that can be applied in a way that may be quasi-anonymous. And how do we embed into our students a respect for those skills and also give them safe areas to practice and learn without, worst case scenario, Colonel Kurtz from Apocalypse Now, you go rogue and start your own private merc army and get involved in conflict. So that's something that would probably be pretty bad for the West Point program, for example. So as far as what we should teach, the interdisciplinary across all the disciplines, I would say, and of course things like secure coding, I think we have a long way to go. Adversarial thinking, kind of putting yourself in the mind of the adversary, and then the privacy and ethics for sure. So.
What more can I say to add value to what you two have already said? I'll just go now. Hi, everybody. I'm Rick Forno. I'm the director of the Graduate Cybersecurity Program at UMBC and the assistant director of our Center for Cybersecurity. I came into the field probably about a little over 20 years ago, being one of those generalists in computing. I was very good with computers as a kid, programming on the old Apple II Basic and whatnot, and kind of moved into college and got into network administration, endured the Novell NetWare 4 fiasco, those of you who remember that. So I've seen this field grow up, and about 6 years ago, I finished my PhD and I moved into academia as a way of sharing lessons learned from my career in industry, from the NOC engineer all the way up to a CSO, and kind of give back and hopefully fix or help the next generation of practitioners not make the same mistakes we did that got us into many of the situations we're in today. So I'm not going to repeat too much of what my counterparts on the panel have said, but I want to emphasize that there is no magic wand to produce a quality information security cyber practitioner. You mentioned peak cyber, and I think that's actually a very valid analogy. I see students looking to move into cybersecurity that have no experience in technology at all. Their only security experience might be changing their Facebook password once a year. Okay. That's not enough to be a practitioner. They don't know the basics of networks and computing and coding and things like that. How can you defend a network if you don't know what one is, or how you structure one, how you build one? So we have to, the issue of producing qualified practitioners, yes, it's an educational problem, but it's also a workforce development problem that's become very politicized. We need jobs. We need to create jobs. Cyber is the new industry, and people are rushing to it because that's where the money is, and that's where the jobs are. But not everybody can just take a course and get a degree, and presto, you're now a cybersecurity practitioner. It doesn't work that way. You need to have those technical foundational skills of computing, what Greg and Jeff talked about, but also those soft skills. How do you put that knowledge into practice in the real world? Being book smart and common sense stupid will not help our career field long term. We've got to know how to be an effective practitioner. We've said already that the field is interdisciplinary, and I see that even on my campus. Programs far outside of computer science are interested in cybersecurity. Media studies wants to put more cyber stuff in their curriculum to expose students to the field and what's out there. I have colleagues across the country in the rhetoric department, looking at various security-related aspects. Not necessarily technical, but broader cultural, legal, policy issues. So this is an interdisciplinary field, and one of the obstacles we have to overcome is the perception that cyber is exclusively technical. Yes, there's a big part of it, and we do need qualified techies, but we need non-technical folks who have some appreciation of technology to make effective decisions at the national and international level. Finally, I would like to build on something that I think Matt said before. Education in any discipline occurs outside the classroom as well. The best security practitioners I know never took computer science or computer security courses. They, in high school and college, were on their own. They coded at nights and weekends, went to HackerCons, went to 2600 meetings, went to things, got their names and credits in various applications. They had an innate drive and desire to learn and grow and push the limits. It's very hard to teach that. That's something that comes from within. We could inculcate it, but if you don't have that spark, you won't have that drive. And folks who think they can just go to a program, an undergrad or graduate program, and become presto, making six figures in the security space, it's a misnomer. It doesn't work that way. And I think I'll stop there and kind of toss it back to Matt.
Okay, so as the moderator, I just want to point out that all three of you said some really smart, interesting things that I like to think about, but none of you answered the damn question. So let me just point out that when we started out, I mean, all of us came to this, and I think I'm speaking not just for the panel, but like almost everybody in the room. We all came from this. We grew up in this generation where we got this informally, right? We were general computer scientists or whatever, whatever our background was, and we learned computer security kind of on the street and by getting bits under our fingernails and just by doing. And that's a terrific way to do that. And at the time that we started in this field, we actually had to make the case that someday security is going to be important. And everybody kind of laughed at us and maybe humored us. And then all of a sudden, it happened. And one of the ways it happened is that those of us who figured out how to do this informally aren't enough to solve the problems that we've got. We're suddenly being asked to come up with systematic ways of reproducing ourselves that we haven't quite figured out how to do. And one of the things that I find interesting is that if you look at how people get trained to do this, it's different at every school. It's everybody has different recommendations about what you're supposed to do here. We're really at its infancy. And I think one of the observations that I often make is as security people, we might not want to be too proud of this, right? We're in the only branch of computer science that's failing. Right? I mean, I've got all my friends who do graphics and they do robotics and they do, algorithms, and they're doing all this amazing stuff. And, yet our networks and our security gets worse and worse and worse every year. We're being called on to fix that problem at scale, not on the individual level where extraordinary people kind of figure it out on their own and do great things. How do we fix this problem at scale? So in other words, you get a second chance to answer the question.
Is that you?
Yes. Put me on stage.
Okay. All right.
I have a history of this.
Okay.
All right, you get 2 minutes.
My first talk at Hope was, I was just going to sit here and be quiet when you guys were talking, but I'm Gus Andrews. My first talk at Hope was invading Matt's Hackers in Academia panel in 2006.
Where we said exactly the same stuff.
It's exactly, so we're not making much progress, but part of the problem I am coming from a school of education, so it's interesting to hear, we should be more interdisciplinary, and there's a bunch of tech guys on stage. You do have a pipeline problem. Like, you've got a pipeline problem. Within education, I hear people saying, let's teach kids how to code. Everybody's got to learn how to code. We'll change the world by doing how to code. And then over on the other side, you have my literacies people saying, let's learn how to blog. They all got to learn how to blog and use Second Life and press the right button in Microsoft Word. And so there's this big gap in the middle where we're not teaching them anything at all about networks. And one of my goals this year, I'm doing some studies on how people understand how networks work, their mental models. And what I want to do is be able to get that straight in front of education practitioners and say, you're ignoring networks, and we need to understand networks. And when I say this, people say to me, you don't really need to do that because we don't need to know how our plumbing works. And I say, Lessig says that code is law. If code is law, you do need to know how Congress works. You teach civics, so we should be teaching people how networks work. So that was mostly what I was going to say, but I'm happy to continue.
Okay, you're done.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Oh, we're going
Yeah,
in order.
you got it. You didn't answer the question the first time. Try again.
So you have to go in order. I want to duck the question
pass.
again.
You can pass.
Well, okay. So here's what I want to say. So we offer some computing security classes. So basically, computer network security and cryptography, right? So we got like 2 classes that are electives, and you can all guess what's in them, right? It's pretty obvious. I would say the problem with having more stuff is I'm gonna say it's a failure of the field. Okay, I claim that there's too much hacking, breaking into stuff, thinking that is foundational, and not enough. Here's how we build secure systems. And it's a problem, right? I mean,
Right. So, I mean, I guess let me restate that question. How's computer and network security different from computers and networks?
Good. If you can run a computer network and build and secure an OS or a network, you're doing basic security if you're doing it right. So I think the two are very closely related, but you can't do computer security without knowing computers or networks themselves.
Okay, so what do we do?
We look at the. Here we go again. We have to look at the curriculum, number one, and build on what you said about not focusing on the tactical. A degree in computer science should focus on those basics, those technical basics that now will include things like secure software development in your programming courses, in your networking classes. So you're not just having one module on how to hack a network. You're throwing in security concepts along the way as an organic part of the curriculum. Build security in. It's one of the development mantras. Well, let's do the same thing for curriculum and inject it where we can along the way so it's not just an add-on at the very end.
Right.
And doing that at the undergrad level, I think is a great first step. And then they can specialize either in their advanced years or as a graduate student into offensive or defensive or whatever specialty they want to deal with.
Great.
I would add to that the accreditation, schools follow accreditation, right? So ACM has its accreditation guidelines, and they teach what's in those programs at the undergraduate level. If you want people to care, you have to bake this into the accreditation. I mean, being on an accreditation panel is probably one of the least fun things you can do as a technologist, but it's getting involved with that and helping rewrite that, then that's the doctrine, the dogma that everyone follows from there. So that's how you hack the system.
Return fire.
Let's keep that one right. I have two now.
Lucky you were aiming for Matt.
Yeah. The problem is when you throw one of these, you're providing us with ammunition to throw back. It really is. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's interesting. So, I mean, what I'm kind of hearing is maybe we should take a bold stand and say security is not a specialization that you should do as an undergraduates.
I disagree with that.
Okay.
It is a discipline. Computing has a variety of different areas. I am an AC. I work with ACM. I am a PEV.
Right.
We have computer science. We have information technology. We have information systems and a wide variety of other areas. There's no reason security can't stand on its own. The perception that I see is that computer science is trying to fill everything. Computer science is worried about the operating systems. It's worried about the communications, and it's a wonderful place to be. But what are you doing about the business? What are you doing about the people? And that's where information technology stood up over 10 years ago. And so within information technology, or a branch off of computer science and information technology, I believe security can stand on its own and can stand under a variety of disciplines. Yes, we need to integrate the software security. We need to integrate good behavior within the other classes, and I believe they can be brought in several areas, but I also believe very strongly that it can be done well. And we've stood up a program and we've taught it for 10 years, and our students are being hired and well accepted within industry. Given that, I think the best thing that this body can do, work with ACM to become a PEV like was suggested. What? Sorry. CSAB. ABET. Right.
But, yeah,
okay.
Whatever. Yeah.
And but more importantly, find your local colleges and become advisors. Help them to understand what the industry wants.
Yeah, I mean, let's just put in a plug. Like, I've done the ABET accreditation stuff in high school in my university, and it's just as much fun as being on a standards body. But you have real impact. So thank you also for pointing out there is a microphone. So you can either send a 1-bit message by throwing your shmoo ball and hitting somebody in the head, or you can send a higher bandwidth message by using the microphone. Please.
So I've been teaching computer stuff for a while, and I've always wanted to be a teacher, but I can't do school. I suck at it. I'm an undergrad right now, but I'm working on it. What are you guys doing about fixing the deficit in security teachers? Because right now, they're all going to Black Hat and DEF CON and teaching there and making a lot of money.
Well, I see that problem quite a bit with my program because all my faculty are adjuncts, and they're coming from the outside world, coming in to teach in the evenings. One of the big problems I see, and this is actually, you hit the nail on one of my main beefs with academia, is that to teach at certain levels, you need to have an appropriate degree, bachelor's, master's degree. There are people I would love to teach in my program that are awesome. They're hackers in the truest sense. They've got 20, 30 years experience. They only have a bachelor's degree. I can't use them as faculty. And that's a tragedy to have that talent washed away and ignored because of how academia is structured. Are there ways around that? Yes, and we can sidestep that in small doses. But I think it harkens back to just the need for so many qualified people. We're plucking instructors out of industry. Just, you want to moonlight? We'll give you a couple $1,000s and teach for us. It happens, and that's, I think, the best we're going to see short of developing this talent on the tenure track where you have folks that are parked in academia for 6, 7, 10 years. Another problem, too, is academia, industry moves so quickly. Academia doesn't. Right. So the folks who are coming to my program, and I'm not slamming academia generally, they're in this world on a daily basis. They're doing this stuff and taking that experience into the classroom.
Guess it was a good question.
Hi. So I keep hearing that different fields such as systems engineering are a formal discipline, and that security engineering is not a formal discipline. Should it be? What are your views on making it a formal discipline, and how should we go about doing that?
Yeah, okay, I'll answer that. I have no idea.
The Naval Academy is doing something called trying to take cybersecurity and make it called a cyber science with almost like an ABET-like standards and accreditation about making a formal regimen for cybersecurity, whatever that is. I don't know where it's at in terms of progression, but they have some money. I think the National Science Foundation is helping them out to do that. Where it is right now, I don't know, but there is work in that area.
They're looking for better names in cyber science too. So if you have some ideas, and that's a true story. I mean, they did survey the just call it cyber, take out science and call it cyber. Is that what I heard? Yeah, I mean, so they are looking for ideas. I mean, because there is a marketing aspect to this. You have to sell it.
So this is a soapbox moment. I know we talk a lot about education at the collegiate level, but at the intermediate level for middle school and high schools, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of the Cyber Patriot program. Mm-hmm. Go home, sign up to be a mentor, because there are so many teens out there that need the technical expertise that don't have it. I'm a mentor for a high school in Portsmouth, Virginia. Wonderful kids, really want to learn it. It's a great way to get in and do the teaching if you don't have the credentials to be a collegiate level teacher.
So I want to say something else. So another issue that's coming up, I mean, I think people are solving this now, but a major issue is computer science doesn't count like other sciences in high school. So at least in the state of Maryland, you can't use it towards the same kind of requirements that you can use physics, chemistry, well, not chemistry in high school, well, maybe some. It doesn't count in the same way. So until we fix it so that there's an expectation that everybody in high school is going to get some kind of CS education or at least have access to it by teachers that are accredited by the state. That's like super important for high school education, right? The teachers have to be approved by the state. We're going to have these sorts of problems, right? So push wherever you're coming from, tell people in your local government, CS should be part of everybody's education. That's the first step.
So this is your diversity moment part 2. So one of the things I've noticed here is it's really great that, the academia is up there and you have a lot of great people in the audience here that are kind of fighting their own battle with, grassroots education and whatnot. I come from where I spent some time at the White House, in eGov dealing with cybersecurity policy. Just recently reviewing an NSC memo talking about developing a cyber ROTC, getting people into the workforce. What I'm finding is an actual lack of knowledgeable leadership in that arena. So unless you know what you want, you can't teach it. And therefore you have this issue with hiring. So, a lot of you know that there's this grand comment that the government is going to hire tens of thousands of cyber experts, but it's very ill-defined. So what is your solution is to working with those people that are in demand? It's great that they go out to industry and they, gobble them up and they kind of keep them walled off until they get frustrated and they move on. But without, folks kind of, leading, demanding what they want, coming up with standards, but not with certifications, coming up with basically a body of knowledge that, as you mentioned before in your intros, qualifies somebody to be a trusted, God, I hate this as a word, cyber person. So, what's your view on that?
We need to breed this audience is the seed corn. These types of people is seed corn. We need to use them to grow more. We need to breed them.
Not a satisfactory answer, but I'll let you know.
Okay, you all have your marching orders.
So, when you're looking for a plumber, do you make sure that they have a bachelor's degree? Or a welder, or an electrician, or a carpenter, or any other sort of trade? We're approaching this in the wrong way. We should not require anybody who wants to be a cyber professional to go and spend $40,000, go deeply into debt, and get a piece of paper that says they are good at sitting in a classroom for 4 years. We should be following the same sort of model that the trades use. We should be getting people basic education in the classroom so they know their ass from a hole in the ground. And then we need to apprentice them to a professional working in the field so that at the end of a 4-year program, they have a good job, they're not so deeply in debt that they want to commit suicide, and they know what they're doing.
So I mean, let me just point out that, I agree with what you're saying, but I'm not sure that any of it is unique to the security aspect of this, right? Computer science is one of those fields in which lots of people without any formal education, do just fine, and that seems to be true for security as it is for operating systems or building other things or whatever those other computer scientists do. One of the purpose of education is to give people a definite path where you go through it and at the end of it you get some skills. Now our society has this problem where we kind of overvalue and often require that one particular narrow path, but it is a path that works for at least some subset of people. It's a good way of sort of scaling up knowledge and producing new people. We seem to know how to do that for other areas of computer science. I'm not sure we're here yet for what we should do for the security aspects of it.
And it's also driven by market demand, right? Where the jobs are. If the companies are hiring people, and I think we've all felt that constraint, trying to hire people on, in academic positions, your hands are pretty tightly bound. You've heard the stories of government, and it all comes down to hiring authorities and what they can hire and what the HR people look for and filter, if you can hire them at all. So sometimes you can work around that, sometimes you can't, but ultimately it's the market demand can help drive a lot of this.
So I think the trades are also. I mean, it's a great analogy, but the problem is we don't know what we need yet, right? We don't know what somebody that's, somebody at the same level as a plumber, but in information security, we don't know exactly what they should be like. So we're erring on the side of you need this super duper, you need to be the world's expert in information security to do anything in it, right? And obviously that's not true in the long term. We don't want that. We want people, to be at all different levels, right, and accessible to everyone. But we're not there yet.
Hi, G. Mark Hardy here. Thought for you folks. We're talking about using, Amelie was talking about it, and then also gentlemen about the trades. Interesting concept, but let me suggest that we're very, very busily learning how to better polish the brass on the deck of the Titanic. And we're teaching our bosun mates how to be better at this and better at that, but we're not addressing what I think is one of the critical failings and gaps right now in our educational structure is how do you teach that captain in the wheelhouse not to drive into the side of a gigantic iceberg? And so all of us, a lot of us are really good technically or want to be really good technically, and that's our highest aspiration, to be the ultra uber senior hyper security analyst. Awesome. but we're not doing a really good job of training the 4 stars and the CEOs and the board members and ultimately the members of Congress and even in the White House, those decision makers who are responsible for the future of this country and our future of all of our industries. So what are we thinking about in terms of being able to educate those folks? They might not be native speakers, but they've figured out their stuff out before. We've got to address that, or we're all going down with the ship together.
It took 20 years to get information security recognized as a critical function of corporate America. Computer security was always parked in the basement somewhere, and now it's become recognized as something that companies have risk associated with. And they've made it into a business understanding that the CEOs and their boards understand to some degree. That said, there's a fair amount of people who don't understand these things, and I'm thinking of our folks the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue. Right. Okay, so maybe part of this.
Okay, so let me point out, we have about 10 minutes left and a whole bunch of people in line. So I know it's a soapbox, but now it's like a hotel-sized little bars of soapbox.
Anybody else want to take a stab at that, or you want to just dodge it?
So one thing I was noticing, you're talking about teaching code. Everybody's like, oh, we'll teach these kids how to code and everything. Who the hell's doing the teaching? Who's teaching the teachers? There are no qualified teachers in a lot of these places that they're talking about doing this. It's like, really failed at bootstrapping here. You're also saying, you're saying between computer systems and networks, what's the difference between that, between computer security and network security? Why is there a difference? Building secure networks should be what we teach. There should not be a way to do this wrong. Like, don't teach people, to use insecure protocols and stuff. It shouldn't be something you add on the end. It's you build in from the beginning. And yet we're still teaching crap ways of doing things. It shouldn't be that add-on. It shouldn't be a separate field. It should be intrinsic to just computer science in general. And the third thing, you seem to be keeping...
You get 2 things. So.
Really?
So real quick.
All right. There's a lot of other fields that, look at the Internet of Things that are now, putting stuff online, doing things that, without consulting security people. That, I think, is a lot of the problem. We're heaping a lot of the blame on ourselves for not solving all these problems. Well, no one is coming to us asking to help, make sure we do these things right in the first place. So it's a matter of integrating security in everything and not taking it so personally when stupid people do stupid things without talking to us.
It's like blaming the firefighter for the fire.
So, okay. Just one quick comment on that. I think a lot of it comes down to misaligned incentives, right? I mean, one of the reasons why the Internet of Things, their thermostat can be hacked is these things can be rushed to market and they bolt on security later as an after effect. And in academia, why aren't people putting this in? It's their incentives aren't aligned, and it's tenure or whatever. They have job security, and they don't have to, and it's more work. So you have to look at the underlying incentives and trying to address those as part of the problem.
So I didn't really have like a challenging thing to say, but I'm one of the students who got schmoozed to come here, and I was just going to say that, like, from my experience, like, when I was in high school, you couldn't take computer science classes at all. Mm-hmm. And then when I got to college, I started helping out with this program that teaches computer science to middle school girls. But it's, like, really difficult to know about or find any of those things. And I've always been interested in computer science, but in security, but I didn't get into it until this year, or last year. Because when I went to college, they told me that wasn't a thing you could do professionally. They told me that you couldn't major in that. And so I just decided to do regular old computer science. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's a serious problem just getting people to know that it's possible, because there are a lot of programs that do exist, and if I could afford them, I would be doing them. Mm-hmm. But, like, people who want to do security, I think, are people who are really motivated people. And so if we all knew that it was possible for us to go out and do these things, I think more students would be interested in doing it. But it's really difficult to get the word out. So the reason that I got into this was about almost exactly a year ago. I met a bunch of hackers at a convention, a non-hacker related convention, and they had a panel on hacking and how wrong it is in the media, and I went to it, and they were like, no, you could totally do this in real life. And they told me about all the meetups in my city, which is Chicago, and I went to those, and I got to learn a lot of stuff from them. So I think that one of the best things that people can do is to go out and tell people that it actually is possible, because that's how I'm here right now. So.
Hi again. So I continue to be struck by the pipeline problem. Think of it just as the fact, think of us as at the inception of the Gutenberg press, right? Suddenly there's this brand new thing and nobody knows how to use it, and it's about to absolutely turn everything over, messing with people's incentives, like Greg said. You're overturning existing publishers who scribed things out by hand. So, and then we don't have a method to get all of the adults alive who didn't have chances in school, much less the teachers who are teaching the kids who do have a chance in school. We just have this massive, massive, broad problem. And so, there are more structural things I think we can do. And one of the things I would throw back to you guys, I do think trade is an interesting idea, but what we've been seeing in trade is, what trade has been spinning up for this has been kind of a different shape of things. Like, for example, in New York, we have Hacker School, where people come, and the programs, I think so far was, somebody correct me if this is wrong, but the program was, you get to go through Hacker School for free. You apprentice with somebody who's currently working in the field, and that's a big part of it, is like this barrier between the actual work in the field, which is moving so fast. Like, how can we even get back into academia? So you apprentice with these people, and your time there is paid for by a company that offers to hire you when you get out. I'm wondering, I'll work over on my side in education, continuing to argue that, like, computer coding is not its own discipline. It is writing. It's just writing. In order to be empowered to be a literate human being at this point in time, people need to know how to code. And so we should be making that case to literacy educators. But for you guys as academics, how do you think we could take on these sort of industry apprenticeship models that are out there? What changes can we make within academia itself to make more space for things like that there? There was a question mark at the end of that.
The short answer is to continue partnering with industry where possible, to have them mentor students in the classroom through various practicums or seminars, give them good experiences on internships and co-ops, essentially take the existing model of internships and partnerships to the next level on a more expansive basis to take advantage of those particular areas like the school that that partnership that you're talking about. So I think the framework's already there. We just need to expand that further.
Hi, I'm Bill Pugh. I'm also a professor of computer science at the University of Maryland. And I want to say that a lot of the amazing learning that happens on a university campus actually doesn't occur in classrooms. It's when students go off, they do side projects, they do group projects, they get excited by stuff. We'd love to have some ShmooCon-ish talks given at ShmooCon at the University of Maryland. We'd love to have some people come and lead students doing some amazing projects, getting them excited about security. So don't think you have to fix or replace the university curriculum. There are all sorts of issues with totally transforming the undergraduate curriculum. There's lots of learning that happens everywhere, including on university campuses beyond the undergraduate curriculum, and I'd love to have some of you guys get more involved with what we're exciting students about doing at the University of Maryland. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to echo that point that a lot of what we can do as academics is not just curriculum, but what kind of culture we foster, right? And that's a really good point. Also, Maryland is way overrepresented here on this panel.
Yeah. So I have 2 degrees from Hopkins in comp sci. I was not eligible at the end to take the professional engineering exams because computer science wasn't recognized. Do you think that academia could move professionalization into computer security by actually forcing it into the PE, and would that help? Because you guys are the people who can actually do it.
Because there's a counter side to that Greg actually touched on in his intro, which is the fact that we have these certification and these new, what I refer to as cyber puppy mills, that are coming up all over the place because there's a fuckload of money being thrown at cyber right now. So if we move this sort of certification into the curriculum, how do you recognize what is good from what is bad? Because the big fear is that we're going to end up with even more snake oil. Anyway, that's Yeah. Does this help or will it hurt?
So the answer is yes, it will help and hurt, and who knows? So actually, the same debate rages within software engineering. Should software engineering be something that you need to be certified in? Should there be professional software engineers? And lots of arguments on all sides, and I don't know the answer. At this point, it's just a stalemate. Nobody knows what to do.
I think there's movement going on in just getting security into the undergraduate curriculum as a starting point, right? And these things progress at a pace, and you can push it, but it doesn't happen overnight. I think Matt's standard bodies analogy was a good assessment of the truth.
So I believe earlier you guys mentioned that crypto was one of the courses you guys teach in your curriculum. And I was sort of wondering if there's sort of a diversion from like theory versus practicality. 99% of the people in this room could probably tell you the number one rule of crypto is to like don't rule your own. Yeah. So I was just wondering, is there some sort of forum that like we can look at syllabi or something, and like if we have particular questions about what you guys are teaching, maybe a better forum for sort of discussing and figuring out how we can work together on this sort of stuff?
There are some forums online. The one that comes to mind right away is they call it CyberWatch. It's run by Prince George's Community College. It's under the NSF. They have a repository of syllabi for college and high school, middle schoolers, where you can go in and see what they're teaching, lab exercises, and offer inputs and ideas. And that's a good starting point. You might find syllabi at various colleges. Some professors post their syllabi on their websites, others don't. So that's more hit or miss. But I would point you to CyberWatch as a starting point for that question and that answer.
Quick postscript, yeah.
So what they do is they align the two-year college and the four-year college curriculum. So if you go to an approved curriculum, 100% of your credits will transfer to your four-year university, although you only had to pay the first 2 years of community college price.
Right.
One other problem that I see is using the term computer science. I feel there are a few to that. First of all, it's too broad. And second of all, I feel like a lot of this is more of a computer engineering type thing than it is a science. And also I feel like computer science, it's networking, it's programming, and software design. And I feel like that should be split out into, like in science, there's physics and biology and chemistry. I think also that we should have apprenticeships. But I feel like also for research into maybe new designs for networks or security things, we still do need academia to do this research, because in an apprenticeship or like a trade, you wouldn't really get that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, computer science is one of those fields that, has science in the name, and fields with science in the name usually aren't, right? That's true.
Hello. I recently graduated with a master's degree in computer science, and I noticed that there was a trend to teach defensive security and kind of veer away from the offensive side due to the inherent risks associated. So I was just wondering, how do we encourage academic organizations to teach offensive security? Because if we don't know the adversary, we're always going to be a little bit behind the curve, and we're not going to find new types of vulnerabilities and find ways to prevent these types of things if we don't focus on offensive security.
So I don't have an answer, but the people we teach these courses, and students come in, and we have to come up with what's going to be in the courses, right? Yeah. As professors. So one thing, whenever I talk courses on security, I like to steal my material from other people, and so whatever's out there on the web, if there are labs, if there are systems that you should attack with tutorials and all that kind of stuff, that's super valuable for faculty who are trying to create these security classes. So any of that stuff would be really useful, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to make one sort of side point to that, which is that it would be great if we could take it as our role to elevate the field from one in which it basically is finding vulnerabilities in things, right? Other branches of engineering don't work this way, right? We don't have people who build bridges that fall down, and then a bunch of bridge not falling down specialists. So it'd be great if we could kind of fix this problem. I don't know how to do it.
If you're teaching security stuff and it's defensive in nature, hopefully if you're a sharp instructor or professor, you're including offensive, because you can't just teach one side of that coin.
Yeah, and instructors have a great deal of autonomy. Typically, they can design their courses as they see fit. And I think your point was very well taken. That if there's free materials you can use and make their job easier, they're more likely to do it. The second is to, I think, coming to places like this and learning and seeing that the thinking in terms of offense feeds in the defense, which feeds in the offense back and forth. That interplay is something to be exposed to, and for those that don't inherently get it. So in 2002, I created a fake New York Times, front page of the New York Times, where Dan Ragsdale, who was my boss at the time, was going to jail because we were teaching hacking. And I was just playing with him. But in 2009, we made the front page of the New York Times for teaching hacking, and it was high fives all around. So there was a turn. But all of this, though, regardless of your institution, you have to explain upward what you're doing, that your students are learning these things. Students have to be, encouraged, inspired to behave accordingly, and you have to kind of communicate up that this is okay. The students aren't going to, take down the East Coast power grid, and then your students need to not take down the East Coast power grid.
Yeah, that second part is, yeah. Okay, we have time for one more question. So,
hello, I'm an undergrad. I found that in the majority of our classes, there are rampant, blatant, trivial vulnerabilities in the examples that professors are giving in classes. I've tried to fix this. I've gone to my professors time and time again for pretty much all the classes and said, hey, this example is wrong, here's why, let's fix it. And they say, either I don't care, or I'm not paid enough to deal with this, or go away. How do you, practical, honest answers, please, how do you put pressure on people in the most effective way to get this stuff fixed and make sure that the stuff that you get fixed is not just immediately thrown away by the person who takes over the class the next year?
It comes down to incentives, right? If they don't have to listen to you, they don't have to listen to you. Although there's public shaming is a powerful tool.
Without burning all the bridges that I have with relationships.
Yeah. Ideally, it's constructive, though, right? I mean, that would be a great study. That's something that you could probably come and speak on. It's something you could write about. It's something you can get maybe the press interested in and help tell the story. I mean, you don't want to throw your instructor under the bus publicly if you don't have to, but if you can collaborate with them, that might be a good start. They might allow you to take on a project that studies that and talks about it, as an example.
And it's not just curriculum, right? I mean, all the standard books on C programming teach you how to do a buffer overflow, right? So it's it's a real problem. Yeah. Okay, so that's it. Thanks for sticking around during the blizzard, which is what snow flurries are called in DC. I think we have some closing remarks from the bosses.
Yes. So as